was left by my successful husband who makes $300,000 a year. My sister thought it was funny and said suing wouldn't work. She smirked at me during what was supposed to be my baby shower, showing she didn't care at all. But I couldn't just keep quiet after being insulted like that. Do you really think you can wreck my family and not face any consequences? I snapped at my sister. Glaring at her, she just laughed and said, "Go ahead, take your compensation or whatever. It means nothing to me, with a husband who makes $300,000 a year. What's $10,000 or $20,000 to us, right, honey?" Then she glanced at my husband, who suddenly looked nervous. But when our eyes met, he quickly apologized. "I'm sorry," he said. My sister was shocked. I took advantage of the moment, reaching into my pocket and pulling something out, pinning it to my dress. My sister's face went pale instantly. "My name is Sarah, and I'm 32 years old. I'm what you'd call a working housewife, managing both home and career. It's been 4 years since I married David. These 4 years have felt like quite a journey. We struggled to have children right from the start of our marriage. I've always dreamed of a warm family with kids, but after we started our married life, I just couldn't get pregnant. We went to the hospital and got checked, but there was nothing wrong. Despite the doctor's hopeful outlook, we struggled for a long time to conceive. Finally, after 4 years, when I did get pregnant, our joy was beyond words. Rubbing my belly, we thanked God countless times. I was working full-time at the beginning, but gradually reduced my workload to prepare for maternity leave. Although letting go of responsibilities at work was tough, the most important thing was the baby growing inside me. Luckily, David and I earned a decent income and had saved enough. David promised to work even harder to support us. He increased his workload by 20%, which worried me. As I entered the stable period of pregnancy, I took leave from work a month before the due date to prepare for the birth at my parents' home. Initially, David, who didn't like being alone, was reluctant, but he agreed for the sake of our child. "I'll miss you, Sarah," he said. I found his attitude somewhat unreliable yet endearing, and I vowed to do my best for our family. When I returned to my parents' home after a long time, I was surprised to see my sister Becky there. We hadn't seen each other in almost 10 years, and I didn't even know she was alive. 10 years ago, Becky had left home with a jobless man, a former bartender. She spent all of her savings and even took money from our parents, leading to them disowning her for about a decade. We had no contact during this time, and I couldn't tell her about my marriage or pregnancy. Her sudden appearance at our parents' house made me uneasy. We were never close as sisters, and seeing her now, more hardened after 10 years, filled me with disgust. "Sarah, are you pregnant? Your belly looks big," she remarked. "I'm almost in my final month of pregnancy. More importantly, where have you been all this time, sis? It's been 10 years since you left home like you were eloping. You didn't even contact us once." "Well, I was disowned by Mom and Dad," Becky explained. "They yelled at me never to show my face again. I couldn't come back because of that. Because you took money from the house, right?" I said, knowing the history. "Yeah, I know, and I've reflected on that," Becky admitted. "I promised to pay back the money, and that's why Mom and Dad allowed me to stay at home again. Maybe a daughter is always precious to them." "What about the man you were with?" I asked. "I broke up with him a long time ago," Becky replied. "He was broke, wasted my savings, and even got into debt. Then he cheated on me with another woman." Her intense expression showed a side of Becky I didn't know. She had always been rebellious, but seeing her like this after so long, she seemed completely worn down, surrounded by negative energy. I couldn't say anything more. Well, it's all in the past now. "Let's put it behind us and get along as sisters," Becky suggested. "I'm going to be living here from now on, so let's make the best of it." However, Living back at home, I felt stressed, mainly because of Becky. She talked about getting along, but that promise was never kept. She selfishly continued living without concern for the family, especially towards me, a pregnant woman. She was inconsiderate, making noise late into the night and rarely getting up in the morning, living off our parents without shame. Yet she showed no guilt. "I'm working, unlike you, Sarah, who's unemployed," she would say, reminding me of her temp job and her promise to pay back our parents. This made her confrontational towards me during my pregnancy leave. "Even if you're pregnant, you're just an unemployed freeloader, eating and sleeping all day," she'd criticize. "This is necessary for the baby in my belly. This is the most important time." I'd defend myself. Yeah, the pregnant lady is always right," Becky would snort, glaring at my big belly. She seemed annoyed that our parents were more concerned about me. One day, worried, our mother suggested to me, "Maybe you should explain to Becky that you're on leave from work, not unemployed. If she understands you're working too, maybe her attitude will change." "It's okay, Mom. I don't care what sister thinks of me. Bringing it up will just complicate things. I just want to focus on giving birth," I replied. I'm worried that she might do something. I understood my mother's concerns, but I didn't want to stress over my sister anymore. The baby was due soon, and I wanted to be a strong mother. I couldn't afford to be bothered by my sister's antics. One day, a week before my due date, my husband David came to visit me at my parents' house. He seemed uneasy in someone else's home, but was dressed sharply in a suit. I couldn't help but inwardly smile at his attempt to look good. "Nice to meet you. I'm Becky." My sister approached my husband dolled up, with a flirtatious tone. She usually didn't wear such heavy makeup to work. She had done up her makeup and was wearing a revealing dress, clearly unsettling David. I stepped in immediately. "Sis, don't you have work? David can't stay long." "Oh, come on. I finally get to talk to David. He looks so handsome in his suit. Seems like a kind man, a far cry from my ex," Becky teased. "Hey, don't bring up strange topics here. David, you earn a lot, right? You're a lawyer, I believe." "I've always admired smart people," my sister continued, giving my husband a glittering look. It seemed my husband wasn't entirely displeased, noticeably stretching his neck to get a better look at my sister's exposed cleavage. I was so dismayed that I smacked him hard on the butt and sent him straight home. If it was just to see my face, his business was done. "Well then, I'm off to work too," my sister said, leaving the house following my husband. I felt a twinge of unease, but I couldn't do more than that. I was feeling utterly exhausted. Later, my mother told me she had personally warned my sister, "You shouldn't call your sister unemployed." After that, she accidentally let slip about our household income and David's job. Though she tried to be vague, it seemed clear that my sister saw David as a capable man. In hindsight, I should have been more cautious at that moment. It might have prevented the hurt that followed. A week passed, and I finally went to the labor. It was an agonizing day and night. When dawn broke, I was filled with indescribable happiness. Our long-awaited baby, though a little small at 5.7 pounds, shone brighter than any jewel to me. My only concern was that David didn't make it in time for the birth. We had agreed that he would be there as it was our child, and I wanted him to witness the birth and remember it forever. However, he arrived at the hospital an hour after the baby was born. When I asked why he was late, he just mumbled an apology about being held up with work. Barely 5 minutes after him, Becky arrived, and something clicked in my mind. Could it be these two? After the huge task of giving birth, I was faced with another issue to deal with. Following that, I was like a demon in my efficiency, all while hiding my deep resentment. Once the postpartum period was over, we decided to have a celebration at my parents' home and invited a large number of relatives including David's parents. Becky was there too, as if nothing was wrong, dressed extravagantly and sticking close to David, exchanging meaningful glances with him. I didn't miss any of it. I have something to tell everyone, I announced as the celebration was in full swing. The attendees, flushed from drinking, turned to look at me. It's a joyous occasion, but I have something important to report. As of today, I will be divorcing my husband, David. The relatives' faces were a picture of shock. Only my parents, who I had briefed beforehand, looked somberly at David, who appeared completely clueless. I continued with more details. I'm embarrassed to say, but while I was struggling with pregnancy and childbirth, my husband repeatedly cheated on me. I've obtained evidence from a private investigator. I'll show you photos of him entering a hotel with another woman and then kissing in the street late at night. And the person he cheated with is my own sister, Becky. With her name called out, all eyes turned to Becky. Her close proximity to David was practically an admission of guilt. Instead of being ashamed, Becky started laughing. Sarah, you're really bold, aren't you? Exposing your own shame in front of the relatives, saying your husband was stolen right after giving birth. It's a shame game that will last a lifetime. Becky retorted. I wanted you to realize the extent of your betrayal. Betrayal sounds so harsh. I just fell in love with David. There's nothing wrong with a loving act. She defended herself. How can you even say that? You slept with my husband, and I'll never forget how both of you visited the hospital room while I was giving birth. I confronted them. I'm sorry to hear what you're going through. Yes, while you were giving birth, David and I were having a romantic encounter in a nearby hotel. Sorry, not sorry. It's quite unbelievable, isn't it? You were left by a husband who earns $300,000 a year. Becky laughed triumphantly and chugged her beer. The relatives around us were speechless with astonishment. Unfazed by the atmosphere, Becky continued, honestly, I can't stand that someone like Sarah gets to be with a high-earning husband. In contrast, I'm a beautiful and mature woman, so it's only natural that David would be attracted to me. He even expressed doubts about his life with his wife while we were together. I don't want to hear about your affair. Is that sour grapes? You're going to have a hard time now, Sarah, a single mother raising a baby. It's really sad for the child to lose a father because of the mother's selfishness. Becky taunted. Sis, be prepared. I intend to demand a substantial amount of compensation from both you and my husband. I won't go easy. I'll make sure you both see hell according to the law. Go ahead, give me whatever compensation you want. I have a husband who earns $300,000, so $10,000 or $20,000 in compensation won't hurt me at all. Right, David? Becky called out flirtatiously. David stood beside my sister, pale and stiff, his hands trembling. Becky looked puzzled as she called out to David, but he didn't respond. Then, as our eyes met, he suddenly shouted, I'm sorry. The most surprised person was Becky, who had been confidently attacking me. What's going on, David? Why did you apologize? I demanded. I have no other choice but to apologize. Come on, get it together. You said you'd handle it if it came to a legal dispute with your wife. You're a lawyer. You can handle any lawsuit. Becky urged him. I trusted you because you told me to leave everything to you. It was all a lie. I just said whatever came to my mouth. My relationship with Becky was just a fling. David confessed. At that moment, I decided to reveal my trump card. I pulled out a badge from my jacket pocket and attached it prominently to my chest. The badge bore a design of scales symbolizing equality. Is that what I think it is? Even Becky seemed to understand the meaning of the badge. Yes, this is a badge allowed only for lawyers. I announced firmly. I want to clarify something. I am not unemployed. I am a lawyer currently on leave due to childcare responsibilities. Once my childcare settles down, I plan to return to work. The $300,000 income you mentioned was my income before I took leave. My husband misled you about his profession. He is not a high-earning lawyer. It was a deception aimed at taking advantage of you. David is actually an office clerk at a law firm, not a lawyer like he claimed. We met at work, and our marriage was discussed despite the income difference. However, I have always tried not to judge people based on their income or status. Sarah, please forgive me. I was lonely after you went to your parents' house, and I made a mistake by getting involved with your sister. I understand if you no longer want David. We will divorce, and I will seek substantial compensation. I specialize in divorce cases, so I know how to handle this legally. You are my only sister, and I don't want that lying man. I am also still paying off debts from my previous boyfriend's loans. I have already submitted the complaint to the court. Just wait for the process to proceed. After some time, I successfully divorced my husband, David. He was hesitant until the end, but when I hinted at increasing the compensation, he finally signed the divorce papers. Of course, he knew how skilled I was as a lawyer, especially if it came to court. David is now struggling a lot. He was fired from the law firm. A man who cheats while his wife is giving birth is unwelcome in any law office. I hope he reflects and lives more honorably from now on. As for my sister, Becky, she was also kicked out of the house and is now without a place to stay. She had already split up with David. She kept calling my smartphone, feeling deceived. I referred her to a law firm. If her claim is valid, a competent lawyer will assist her, although I doubt she can afford the legal fees.